I met someone that says, try this stuff, this is better and it's cheaper. And that's when I was introduced to heroin, which was cheaper and better. I had somebody overdose and die in my living room. And you would have thought that would have been my rock bottom, and it wasn't. My name is Zyra Zayas, and I am originally from Puerto Rico. That's where I was born. I've been here about 35 years now, maybe 36. I believe we came December 1989, maybe 88. Financial situation in Puerto Rico is always a little bit less comfortable than what the United States has been like. And I know that at some point, I believe my father was laid off from his job, and he had previously worked with someone in the United States. And so he was offered a job in Florida, and they decided to take it, and we came here like most people, right? Seeking the American dream, a better life, less crime, all that good stuff. And I came somewhere where I did not speak the language. So everything was foreign, from the food, the people, the language, everything. Everything, like I was just picked up and put somewhere else in a whole different world almost. It felt like at 5, 6 years old. I got told things like, go back home on your banana boat. I had no idea what that even was. Apparently, people do come here on rafts and whatnot. Puerto Ricans are American citizens, so I was just completely clueless as to what was going on. There was not as many Hispanic in Tampa, definitely not as many Spanish-speaking people as you see now. I could not go to my local school because there was not a bilingual teacher there. I had to be bused to another school. I couldn't even tell a soul when I needed to go to the restroom. It was very, very difficult. Both of my parents always had jobs. That is something that I grew up seeing, that you just worked, it's what you did. My parents, they were very by the book people, so to speak. You know, my mother never even had as much as a parking ticket. My dad went to church every Sunday, and we worked. That's what we did. My mom, worked, went to night school, just always being an overachiever. My dad always had a job, so I was not afraid to work. I started working when I was 15, and I would finish school when I was in high school and go from school straight to my job. And I saved money, I bought my own car, and I just worked wherever. Being young, I was reckless and irresponsible like a lot of young people, and I walked off jobs and whatnot until I got a little bit older. I've always liked talking to people, and I interact well with people. I kind of just acclimate to whatever's there. I've done a lot of waitressing jobs, or ones that I've really enjoyed. And now I do customer service on the phone, talking to people, still. Struggles have always been there. My struggles, I think, really started more when I became of adult age. At 22, I had my son, my first child, and I already had this false perception of reality in life. And now I have this baby, and reality just hits me so hard, and I have a whole nother person that I'm responsible for. That's where I think I really hit one of my big struggles, because I went through some real postpartum depression that I had no idea what that was at all. And I really felt like I was not okay, but I just thought it was part of being a new mom. You're not sleeping, you got a crying baby, all those things. And I didn't realize how much deeper that was. Of course, like probably many, many Americans today, I I had a C-section, I was prescribed meds, and jumped on that opiate train like a lot of people did. And that's where a lot of my financial, social struggles really just took off from there. I'm just a mess, and I'm trying to get through, and I'm working, and I'm, taking these opiates, which, obviously progress, and I'm driving under the influence of opiates and, pain meds, and then I get into car accidents, so then I get more, they get stronger, and then it becomes my whole world to the point where I'm not functioning well. I'm doing the bare minimum, and I'm running through my scripts before the next doctor's visit, so I'm running out. Now I'm purchasing whatever I can, so therefore something's not getting paid, and it just goes and gets more and more and more into that, just making really bad choices. I got a DUI, not even drinking, just being under the influence. And then not having them would also make me angry because I felt good and calm when I had them. So when I didn't, I would be angry. I would just not be pleasant. I ended up going to jail a few times behind that. At one point, DCF did step in and remove my son because I was just not stable at all. I couldn't care for myself, at least not well. And so my son went to live with my dad. So that was kind of early adulthood. My rock bottom came later. I found out there's many bottoms that a person can hit, not just physically, mentally, but even spiritually. And I was able to put myself back together, and then when I turned 30, I had my daughter. I thought that because I've already done this, I know better, all that stuff, that I was supposed to miraculously do better. And I didn't realize that you can't do something you've never been taught how to do, right? Yes, I had one child and I went through postpartum, but I never worked through it. I completely crashed and burned. So here comes my second child, and I did the exact same thing. The exact same thing. And at this point, it wasn't just taking the pills, it went to a whole nother level of using them, and it became intravenously. The pills wasn't enough. And then I met someone, because that's always how it happens. I met someone that says, try this stuff, this is better and it's cheaper. And that's when I was introduced to heroin. I have seen so many people, not seen them die, but they're no longer here because of that. And I think to some degree, maybe there was a part of me that I just felt like I can't do anything right. I can't do this right. Like I went into survival mode somewhere along the line, and I don't know when that happened. And that wasn't enough. I would feel so sad. I would leave my daughter all the way on the other side of the room. And I'm sorry, I get emotional every time I tell this story. So, and I had a friend come over, and they were like, why is your daughter all the way on the other side of the room? And I said, because babies feel what you feel. And I don't want her to feel how sad I am. Like that was gonna make it better or something, you know? And I was scared to tell anybody. I was like, they're gonna think I'm crazy. They're gonna take my baby, all these things, because I had just had a similar experience. So instead, I did what I know how to do, right? So I self-medicate and I self-destruct. On one of my many trips to jail, I asked for drug treatment. I first went to rehab in the summer of 2016. And I was almost ready, but not quite ready. After like 2 weeks, I bolted. I was like, I'm not doing this. And I left. And I was gone for about 30 days. And I was like, that was stupid. Why did I do that? And I went back. And I did about 6 months, and I got out from rehab successfully about 2 weeks before my daughter's birthday. My daughter is now 5. She turned 5. It was really nice to be home for that. I get out of rehab, and I've obviously been by myself, so to speak. Like, I'm not with friends. I was just with all the other peers in rehab. And so I come home. I feel like I just have this compulsion for like really stupid mistakes, right? My daughter turns 5, and a month later I find out I'm pregnant, and it's just, I'm in my mother's house at this point. I'm an adult. I'm well into my 30s. I just was like, it's time to grow up. I can't sit in my mother's house and, just at this age. My kid's father, my daughter's father, and I go to getting a place together. This time, I did do something different, and I did tell my OB, I said I suffer from postpartum really bad, and this is what's happened the last 2 times, and about the opiates. So there was a lot more people there that were able to support me through that, and before I even left the hospital, they started me on meds. They were watching my dosing and not give me too much and allow me to wean off and just all those things. So it helped that I had a much bigger and better support system than I did any of the other times around. So this past time I didn't do the same thing. My kid's dad and I, we got into an apartment, and unfortunately, he and I met in recovery, and he has really struggled to maintain his sobriety, just hasn't been able to do it. I, on the other hand, just, for the first time, I was able to just be like, I'm gonna enjoy being a mom. I couldn't tell you why I didn't feel that before. I almost felt like it was a punishment, and then I feel bad saying that, like I'm a bad person. I felt guilty for that because I was like, I don't want to be home with kids. I want to do whatever I want. At this point, I was like, I've already done that. I ran and ripped and did and didn't, and there's nothing fun out there. I found out probably a couple years ago that I had it all wrong. And the best things and the best part of my life are at home. And that was a really beautiful thing for me.
What's something good that's happening in your life right now?
What's something good is, we're just starting through a new chapter. I finally am looking to make plans for the future. We actually got passports, and we want to travel. Money's always tight. I actually purchased a financial planner, so I'm trying to make goals and edit and see where I can save some money so that we can possibly travel somewhere. So that is one of our biggest, or at least mine. She wants to go to Japan. We'll see. I want to definitely travel. That's what I'm looking forward to.